The Prophet ﷺ tells us in the great hadith that the most beloved prayers to Allah is the prayers of Dawud alayhi salam. And the most beloved fasting to Allah is the fasting of Dawud alayhi salam. The Prophet ﷺ is referring to the night prayer. He said Dawud alayhi salam would sleep the first half of the night, and then would pray for 1/3 of the night, and then would sleep again until dawn, the last 1/6 of the night. And for every night, he used to do that. Just imagine somebody who is a judge, who is a ruler, a king, and would teach his people religion. Again, he had enough time to devote himself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As far as his fasting goes, the Prophet ﷺ tells us that Dawud alayhi salam would fast one day and would break his fast the next day, and so on and so on. Day after day he would fast. And then also the Prophet ﷺ tells us that among his character was that he never fled from battle. He was so courageous. So he's not only a worshipper, but a king and a fighter and a courageous man. He lived a very beautiful life. The Israelis for a long period of time were divided. Now they are united under him, and he created a strong nation. Also, his death came in a very special way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Adam the opportunity to see all of his descendants. Everyone that came from the descendants of Adam were taken from the back of Adam as atoms and then raised into full human beings. And Adam looked at these billions of his descendants. And then among them he saw somebody glimmering with a sparkle between his eyes. So he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, "Oh Allah, who was this?" And he said, "This is one of your descendants who will come at the end of time. His name is Dawud." Adam said, "Oh Allah, how long will he live?" It's very beautiful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "He will live 60 years. Then Adam said, "Oh Allah, give him 40 years from my age," because Adam will live for 1,000 years. He was appointed 1,000 years. So I said, 1,000 is a long time. Give him 40 out of my years. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted that, changed the law of their ages, and he gave 40 years to Dawud. When the angel of death came to Adam at 960 years to take his soul, and as I told you before, death doesn't come to the prophets suddenly. They are given the choice. Do you want to die now or later? So he came to him and he said, "You have expired your age." He said, "But I still promised 40 years. He said, "Didn't you give it to Dawud?" The Prophet ﷺ says, فَنَسِيَ آدَمْ فَنَسِيَتْ ذُرِّيَّتُهُ. This is the first time Adam forgets, and from that people started to forget. Now back to Dawud alayhi salam. So he was supposed to live 60 years, but because of that, he was given 40 years more, and he lived for 100 years. Dawud alayhi salam was very protective of his woman, very jealous. And some people have this character, and he was among them. He was a very jealous person, and he had many wives. He lived in a palace surrounded and fenced by high walls, and no person is allowed inside these chambers of his wives. These chambers had a palace, but also had a garden next to that palace, and then the fence. And there was no way for anyone to trespass and be in the palace without the guard seeing him. One day, the woman saw a man standing in the garden. They said, "How did he pass all the guards? How did he cross this huge wall?" So they immediately started to talk about him, and the news spread, there is a man in the palace, and he will definitely be punished by Dawud alayhi salam. So Dawud alayhi salam heard the news, immediately ran to this man. "How dare you cross my fences and be in my private chamber? Who are you? How did you pass by the guards?" And he said, "I am the one that cannot be stopped by borders or guards our fences. Dawud immediately recognized that this was not a human being. This was the angel of death in a human form. As with other prophets, the angel of death said to him, "Do you permit me to take your soul?" And Dawud gave him the permission, because one day he has to die. He's already 100. So Dawud was dead and he was buried in Jerusalem. This story is mentioned in the authentic hadith by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Dawud alayhi salam ended a very long life, 100 years of worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He became a prophet very early on, and he became the heir of the king when he was 15 years old. For most of his life, he was a prophet and a king, the best of kings and among the greatest prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the story of Dawud alayhi salam. Next time we will continue with the story of Sulaiman alayhi salam, Solomon alayhi salam. May Allah be pleased with you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.